Okay, I'm going to do my presentation on recommendations for budget issues in New Mexico, so about the Department of Languages and Linguistics in the College of Arts and Sciences. And as we've talked about throughout the semester, we talked about the importance of aligning budget allocations and towards the missions and mission statements and values of the units that are being discussed. So I've included here the mission statements, first for the College of Arts and Sciences and then for the Department of Languages and Linguistics. I'm not going to read the College of Arts and Science mission statement, but I will the one from Language and Linguistics. It says, the mission of the Department of Languages and Linguistics is to engage students in the discovery, learning, and critical study of world languages, literatures, and cultures from diverse viewpoints, so that they may broaden their understanding of and make meaningful contributions to a complex, interdependent, and global community. And as we've talked about, as I mentioned before, and specifically the articles by Bresciani and also Treadle and Yeager, talk about aligning resources with values and mission statements, and then the Treadle and Yeager article talks about linking strategic planning and priorities based on those values and allocations. So the focus here we can see is helping students discover and learn and engage with local but also global communities. And if you read the College of Arts and Sciences mission statement, you'll see that that fits well within the same mission. So for talking about our actual budget, you'll see here that it's not a huge budget, but it's an important part of, I think, the whole university system at NMSU. Our total budget is just over $1 million. You can see that the majority obviously goes towards salary for faculty and graduate assistants. We talked about that in class many times, that the bulk of departmental budget will go focused towards paying salary. In our case, you'll see that the tenure track, college, and adjunct is the larger part, obviously. But an interesting note is the budget line there for our graduate assistants. We have anywhere from 12 to 15 graduate assistants in any given semester, and all of our graduate assistants are put into the classroom. They teach first or second year Spanish courses. And an interesting note is that amongst the graduate students, they are responsible for generating more student credit hours, which has been a way to measure departmental success in the past, a performance base. As I said, they generate more student credit hours when compared to the tenure track, college track, and adjunct faculty. So we can say that we're getting a pretty good bang for our buck there when it comes to budget generation, because they do a huge part of the work that takes place in our department. You'll see the operational budget there is $34,500 divided into the different areas listed. The biggest chunks going towards travel funds, travel budget, which is about $8,000. Next would be the LLC, which is our Language Learning Center. And then the other big area would be copies and printing that would also go towards student-focused activities. We can say that all of the budget that is generated or is used in our department is allocated towards the mission of the department, in that of engaging students. The next slide here is going to talk about the budget cuts, but before we get into that, I'd like to mention a couple of the external and internal factors that influence our budget. Obviously, the external factors would be the state budget allocation, and we know that it's been reduced for us at NMSU, so that trickles down into our department as well. And then the other external factor across the board at the university is the fact that we have a 4% reduction in, well, not reduction, but decline in student enrollment for this upcoming fall. And so, as I said, that trickles down to across the board into our courses. So we can say that that is an internal factor as well. And a couple of other internal factors that affect our budget is that departments across campus have been doing away with the language requirement. In times past, we've had the luxury of many departments requiring between 2 and 4 semesters of a language as part of their majors. And so what we're seeing is departments are going away with that, doing away with that, and that has an effect on us. Additionally, in our department, we have major areas, and students can get a major in German, French, and Spanish. And we're seeing, and this is a trend that's seen nationwide, worldwide, as a matter of fact, at least in our area, is a decline in study of traditional languages like French and German, and an increase in interest in languages like Spanish and Chinese and Portuguese. And so declining enrollments in French and German may be an area that could be, I don't want to say vulnerable, but could be an area of focus for budget cuts. We've talked about making tough decisions at times like this, and so that might be one of those areas that if it's not an area of growth, we need to service it, but perhaps not focus all of the resources in that one direction. One of the positives that we have in our department is an increase in interest in taking online courses, and that could be a source of revenue for us as we move forward, because it seems that no matter what language it is, if we are able to offer a course online, it automatically fills, and so that can be a positive that we can draw on for some revenues. So now to the slide. The goal of having a reallocation of 7% for our department represents approximately $74,000. Some of the first responses that we always have when we look at budget cuts are to not replace retiring faculty or faculty that move on to other jobs at other institutions. The retirement has been a common one for our department. We've had 4 professors retire over the past 3 to 4 years, and even though we've requested, we have yet to receive a replacement for any of those. Obviously, one of the areas, since it's one of the larger parts of our budget, is to cut travel budgets, but that has an adverse effect because it decreases the morale, because faculty then are required to use their own personal funds to go to conferences or do research that would advance the mission of our department. Other responses are to cut courses and other departmental services, but as we've seen, any cut in any of those areas would directly affect the mission of the departments, which is to help students engage and discover things in languages. So for the recommendations, I've divided it into 2 areas, and I'd like to spend the bulk of the time talking about things here. One area will be reductions, and then the other area is going to be areas of revenues, because if we combine the 2 together, then we have positives all the way around. So on the reduction side, the first is to not replace a professor position in a dwindling program. This year we had 2 professors leave our department, and it would have been easy just to say, okay, we'll just not replace both of those and we'll have more than a 7% reduction. But one of the things we always have to consider is if we reduce faculty positions or graduate assistant positions, then we reduce services that we provide to students. That affects, the rest of the faculty, because then they're expected to take on the added burden of increased students in classes and increased work like that. But in this case, we had a professor leave from a dwindling program who taught French and linguistics and French linguistics, and so as we see a reduced number of interest in French majors, that would be one of the places that we could reduce, obviously one of the bigger chunks. The other would be to cut our work study position. It's not a big amount, $4,000, but we have so many graduate assistants that have duties of doing office hours, which no students usually come to, and lab hours, which we do have a vibrant lab. But we can always refocus their efforts and move them into the office where our work studies worked, and they can help with that. So that's a reduction of $4,000. The Language Learning Center is going to be absorbed by the new trend on campus to centralize all of the ICT, the technology services, and so essentially that budget would go away from our operational budget area, so we would be able to reallocate the $5,500 to other areas. The other would be to change the travel budget to an incentive-based budget system. The article by, I think it's Hearn and Lewis et al. Talks about incentive-based budget systems, and so faculty that are producing more would be able to receive more budget in the travel budget than others that may not be. One of the other areas that we could reduce would be to train faculty to use e-documents, to go green, as they say, and reduce the printing budget by at least half. It's $5,500 now. If we were only able to reduce it by half or even more, that would help the operational budget. And you can see by those reductions we would generate a savings of around $73,520, which is almost right there with our magic number of $74,000. But while reducing, we can also do things to generate revenues. As I mentioned, our online courses are revenue generators in our department. Each student that takes a course pays $35 per credit as a tech fee, the online distance education fee. And our college has started sharing the revenues from that with departments. So in academic year 2016-17, we received $14,300 back from that fund. And typically the department saves some for administrative purposes, but then divvies it out on an incentive budget basis. Those who teach more online courses receive more funds, and then therefore they could use that for things like travel or anything that they would like to. So I see that as a possible way of offsetting and generating more funds for the department. Other services that can be done by the department are to offer translation, interpretation, and testing services. These come under some of the ideas from the articles on academic, institutional, and industry relationships by Campbell and Wiseman. Others for academic entrepreneurship, the one by Wright and Mosey and Noak. We can find ways to generate more funds by charging other departments on the university for translations and reaching out to the community. A couple of other ways that we've done in the past, but could also look for more ways in the future. Again, looking at the entrepreneurial ideas would be to seek royalties that could be given to the department. That would be by producing textbooks by different faculty members for classes that are taught in the department, and then royalties. A portion of the royalties that are received by selling those books would then come back to the department. We did that in the past, and it worked really well in offsetting course costs and also printing costs in the department. And we've talked about other areas like incentives for those who receive grants. And another area would be producing customized courses that could then be taken out to the community, like Spanish for medical or healthcare, Spanish for business, things like that. So there are many ideas, and I think by being creative and combining reductions with revenues is ultimately the way to go. And just quickly in closing, I know I'm a little bit over time, I just have a list of the references here. You'll see that Bresciani and the Treadle and Jaeger articles talk about aligning resources with the values and missions. The Campbell and the Wiseman article talk about institutional and academic relationships. I really liked the article by Hearn, Lewis et al. That talked about incentives for managing growth. You know, the IBBS, the incentive budget-based system. I think that can do a lot for us. And then the other articles talk about the Leifner article and the Wright article et al. Articles talk about being entrepreneurial when we think about ways of generating budgets. So I hope this was informative. Thank you very much.